From the heart of Washington District of Columbia, a voice that usually commands the headlines of the West has spoken a truth that African capitals have whispered in the dark for decades. Donald Trump, looking across the Atlantic, has admitted what the global powers have always known, but rarely said aloud, that Africa possesses a tremendous, almost immeasurable value beneath its red soil. It is a land blessed beyond imagination, filled with the gold, oil, diamonds, and cobalt that the modern world requires to survive, to grow, and to dominate. Yet, this admission from a Western billionaire raises a haunting, primary question that stings the soul of every patriot. If the land is so rich, why are the children of the soil still struggling to find bread? Why is a continent that powers the electric cars of the future and the jewelry of the elite still described by the vocabulary of poverty? The truth is as cold as steel. Africa is not poor. It is a continent of bankers who have forgotten they own the bank. It is not empty, it is not behind, and it is certainly not lacking in potential. But for centuries, the wealth of this land has been used to build the cathedrals and the glass towers of others. We have been trapped in a predatory system where we extract but do not produce, where we supply the world's needs but do not own the industries that process them. Do not look away. What comes next may change how we read the map. If you believe in these stories, give us your like, leave your thoughts, and subscribe to continue this journey together. Consider the reality of our resources. Cobalt from the Congo is currently powering the green revolution in foreign cities, yet the hands that dig it often remain empty. Oil from Nigeria fuels the economies of distant nations, while local communities wait in lines for fuel. Gold from Ghana leaves the continent in raw bars, only to return as expensive watches that the miners could never afford in 10 lifetimes. This is the definition of a broken legacy. Africa works, but others profit. Africa bleeds, but others thrive. When the world looks at us and sees tremendous value, they are not looking at our faces, they are looking at the lithium, the cobalt, and the oil. They see a warehouse of raw materials, not a house of sovereign people. But a new wind is blowing across the Sahel, carrying a message that is shaking the foundations of this old, extractive order. Ibrahim Traoré has emerged as a voice for those who are tired of waiting for a seat at a table that was never built for them. He represents a generation that has realized that value without control is nothing more than a decorated cage. In Burkina Faso and beyond, the narrative is shifting from the export of raw materials to the export of power. The revolutionary spirit is no longer about asking for a better deal from the master. It is about becoming the master of one's own harvest. Ibrahim Traoré has consistently reminded the youth of the continent that they are not the future, they are the present. They are the ones who must stop waiting for leaders to give them permission to be great. The wealth beneath the land belongs to the people who walk upon it, but having resources is a far cry from controlling them. The real power does not lie in the number of diamonds in the mine. It lies in the ability to set the price, to build the factory, and to refine the destiny of the nation within its own borders. We have spent too long exporting our wealth and importing our own poverty. This cycle of dependency is a psychological chain that must be broken before the physical ones can truly fall. If a leader from thousands of kilometers away can recognize that the lack of unity is the only thing standing between Africa and global dominance, then why do so many of our own leaders remain silent? Why do we continue to negotiate as 54 separate, fragile voices instead of one unstoppable force? The world sees our value, they see our potential, but they also see our division, and they count on it to keep the system running. The time for waiting has passed into the archives of history. We are entering an era where the struggle for sovereignty is no longer a choice, but a necessity for survival. If we do not unify and seize control of the value that Donald Trump so clearly sees, we will remain the warehouse of the world while our people go hungry in the midst of plenty. But the question remains, if the wealth is ours and the land is ours, who exactly is holding the key to the gate, and why are those we trusted to lead us so afraid to turn the lock? The 54 voices of Africa are not a chorus of strength. They are currently a collection of whispers that the wind of the West easily carries away. For years, the international system has relied on this fragmentation to maintain its grip on the continent's wealth. When Donald Trump mentioned that Africa has tremendous potential, he followed it with a condition that many of our own leaders seem to ignore: if they can unify and get together. He sees it from the outside, from the perspective of a man who understands that a single, united bloc is far harder to manipulate than 54 separate, competing entities. Right now, Africa is not one. It is 54 different policies, 54 different sets of negotiations, and 54 different ways to be exploited. This is the ultimate dream of any global power, because when a single African nation sits across the table from a superpower, it negotiates from a position of profound weakness. It is one voice against a giant. But when 54 nations stand together as a single fist, the world is forced to listen. This division is our greatest liability, a wound that we continue to salt with our own hands. Let us take a moment here, not to rush forward, but to give thanks. Write a comment with a simple thank you to Traore, to Burkina Faso, or to the spirit of sovereignty itself. Gratitude is not a formality, it is recognition, it is dignity expressed in words. When you add your voice of thanks, you are not just engaging with a video, you are standing in solidarity with a story of freedom and pride. So, before we continue, take this pause to comment your thank you. Together, those words become a beacon that shines far beyond the screen. The economic consequences of this disunity are visible in every market and every mine across the continent. We are trapped in a cycle where we export our raw value and import our own poverty. We sell our cobalt, our oil, and our gold at prices we do not set, only to buy back the finished products at prices we cannot afford. This is the tragic irony of our current era. We supply the world with the ingredients of its prosperity, but we do not own the kitchen. Why do we continue to supply raw materials without adding value? Why do we sign deals that leave us with nothing but holes in the ground and debts in the bank? It is because we have been taught to compete against our brothers instead of cooperating with them. We are told that we are in a race for foreign investment, but in reality, we are in a race to the bottom, offering our resources cheaper and cheaper just to get a nod of approval from a foreign capital. The strategy of divide and rule did not end with the colonial flags. It merely evolved into a more sophisticated software of control. Today, it exists in the trade agreements that prevent us from trading with each other. It exists in the borders that make it harder for an African to travel within his own continent than for a stranger to fly across the ocean. It exists in the policies that keep our currencies weak and our dependencies strong. Ibrahim Traoré has often spoken about this internal sabotage. He has looked at the map of West Africa and seen the potential for a unified Sahel that produces its own food, secures its own borders, and protects its own dignity. In Burkina Faso, the message is clear. The era of begging for crumbs is over. We must build our own factories, our own industries, and our own future. We must stop being the warehouse and start being the architect. But as we strive for this unity, we must confront a painful reality. Many of the deals signed today do not benefit the mother in the market or the young man in the field. They benefit a small elite who have mastered the art of trading national sovereignty for personal gain. They understand the system, and they use it to ensure that Africa remains a collection of fragments. They talk about continental free trade, but they are afraid to allow the free movement of people and the creation of a single currency. If a leader who is thousands of kilometers away can see that our lack of unity is our primary failure, then we must ask the hard questions about those who live among us. Do they understand that the challenges of this continent, the terrorism, the poverty, the instability, will only be solved the day we rise as one? Or are they too comfortable in the status quo to risk emotion for a united Africa? The truth is that the world does not want a united Africa. They fear a continent that can negotiate with one voice, set its own prices, and control its own energy. They want to keep us in a state of perpetual negotiation, where we are always asking for aid and never demanding our due. But the ground beneath us is shifting. The youth are no longer willing to wait for the old guard to find their courage. But as we look toward this dream of a united front, we must wonder about the systems that put these leaders in place. Is it possible that the very democracy exported to our shores has a hidden gear? A gear designed to ensure that the people who reach the top are the ones most likely to keep the continent divided? The failure of the old guard is not merely a failure of policy, it is a failure of the spirit. For too long, The halls of power across this continent have been occupied by those who are more interested in the approval of London, Paris, or Washington than the prosperity of their own people. We see the evidence of this betrayal in the very bodies of our leaders. When they fall ill, they do not seek the care of the doctors they have trained or the hospitals they have built. They flee. They seek treatment in the capitals of Europe, effectively admitting that they have failed to create a system worthy of their own lives. If they do not trust the medicine of their own soil, how can they ask the people to trust their leadership? This is why the landscape is shifting. A new generation of military leaders has been suggested by the necessity of the times. From Burkina Faso to Mali, from Niger to Guinea, and across the vast plains of the Sahel, men in uniform have stepped forward to fill the void left by a decaying political establishment. These are not politicians trained in the art of the compromise. They are soldiers who understand that sovereignty is not a gift to be requested, but a territory to be defended. Before we reveal the next chapter, which is perhaps the most powerful assertion of sovereignty you will ever hear, I want to pause and speak directly to you. If this channel has moved you, if these stories are touching something deep in your spirit, then consider becoming a member, not for exclusive content or perks, but because supporting this channel is directly supporting narratives that mainstream media refuses to tell. Every membership is a vote for Sankara's Echo's mission. Every member becomes a co-creator of the revolution we are documenting. Join us. Stand with the principle that African wealth belongs to Africa. The world watches with a mixture of fear and fascination as leaders like Ibrahim Traoré speak a language that hasn't been heard with such clarity since the days of Thomas Sankara. They talk about a standby force. They talk about a unified army. They talk about a continent that no longer waits for the United Nations or the African Union to provide a security that never arrives. The question being asked in every village square is simple. Why don't these military leaders sit down and draft the blueprint for one African army? If we can coordinate our resistance, if we can share our intelligence, and if we can stand as a single defensive wall, then the era of foreign intervention will reach its final hour. But the path to this unity is paved with immense pressure. The global powers do not sit in silence while their warehouse of resources begins to lock its doors. They use the software of control that they call democracy, a system often exported not to bring freedom, but to ensure that the people put in power are those who will not challenge the extractive order. Behind the curtain of elections, there are often hidden agendas designed to elevate those who are more interested in their private homes in Europe than the public schools of their own nations. It is a sophisticated trap. If a leader has been in power for 15 years and has not solved the basic challenges of his people, then we must ask, whose interest is he truly serving? We must look at the examples of resistance elsewhere to understand what is possible. Look at the resilience of Iran. Despite losing generals and leaders, despite decades of sanctions and isolation, they maintain a spiritual fighting spirit. They refuse to yield to the pressure of superpowers. If a single nation can resist such immense force, imagine what an entire continent could do if it found its own spiritual and political will. The lesson of Iran is not about their specific ideology, but about the power of a people who have decided that their sovereignty is not up for negotiation. The superpowers are not learning, they are simply waiting. Donald Trump has spoken loudly about the resources of Africa. Do you think he, or any other global leader, will sit quietly and watch a divided Africa possess everything, while their own nations lack the raw materials for the future? No. They will find opportunities. They will find the cracks in our walls. They will find the leaders who are ready to sign away the harvest for a temporary nod of approval. The real power is not in the lithium or the cobalt. It is in the collective soul of the people who decide to protect it. We have seen what happens when we wait for the West to intervene in our conflicts. Look at the civil war in Sudan or the endless instability in the Great Lakes region. We wait for America or the United Kingdom to act as judges, forgetting that a judge who profits from the crime will never deliver justice. Ibrahim Traoré represents the refusal to wait. He represents the calloused hands that are no longer just tilling the soil, but are now holding the shield of the nation. But the cost of this resistance is high. It means sanctions. It means being labeled as a pariah. It means facing a manufacturing of dissent from within. The price of true independence is the loss of foreign comfort. But as we move forward, We must decide, are we ready to sign contracts that actually benefit our children? Are we ready to move past the single passport and the single currency into the reality of a single, unstoppable African destiny? The dawn is breaking, but the shadows of the old guard are long and cold. They are not interested in the light because they have built their fortunes in the dark. But the question is no longer whether we can unite, but whether we can afford not to. Because the world is already coming for our resources, and they are not bringing gifts. They are bringing contracts written in the ink of our own blood. We must confront the most uncomfortable truth of our current era. Why do some leaders remain in power for 15 or 20 years without solving a single fundamental challenge for their people? The answer lies in the hidden agendas that often operate behind the curtain of exported democracy. In many cases, the systems designed to select our leaders are rigged to ensure that those who reach the top are the ones least interested in African unity. They are the ones who have different homes in the different capitals of Europe and America. They do not see the importance of a unified continent because their personal safety net is woven from foreign threads. When a leader is treated for a common illness in a foreign hospital, he is silently announcing that he has no faith in the very nation he governs. He is telling his citizens that the quality of medicine, the quality of doctors, and the quality of life he provides for them is not good enough for himself. If they knew they had no other place to go, if they knew their survival depended on the clinics in their own villages, they would do something great for this continent. This is the betrayal of the elite, a psychological distance that keeps them from feeling the heat of the fire that consumes the ordinary African family. Take a second, right here, to tell us where you are watching from. Type the name of your city, your land, the soil beneath your feet, and as you do, know this. Sankara's echo sends you not just thanks, but a blessing for strength in your hands, for pride in your heart, for light on the road ahead. The comments below become a map of connection, showing that this message reaches far beyond borders. The military leaders who have stepped forward in this hour are often criticized by the very systems that failed us, but we must ask, why shouldn't these soldiers sit down and strategize for a single army for Africa? If we can create a standby force that does not wait for a nod from the West, we can solve the conflicts in Sudan and the instability in the Sahel ourselves. We are waiting for the United Kingdom or the United States to intervene, yet history shows that their intervention is often the precursor to extraction. We have seen what is happening in the world today. We have seen nations like Iran maintain their resistance even after losing their highest generals. They possess a spiritual and military discipline that refuses to be broken by external pressure. Can African leaders learn from this? Can they realize that the world is moving toward a multipolar reality where only those who stand together will survive? Donald Trump has already spoken loudly about our resources. He will not sit quietly while a divided Africa holds the treasures that his own nation lacks. America and other global powers will look for opportunities, and they will find them in our division. Are we ready to enter into good agreements? Are we ready to sign contracts that protect the harvest of our children instead of the bank accounts of the few? The time for political will is now. We have the people, we have the market, and we have the tremendous value underground. What we lack is the courage to speak with one voice, to form one currency, and to allow the free movement of our own brothers across the artificial borders drawn a century ago in a room in Berlin. Before we close, let us pause. What you have just heard is not simply an episode of history, it is a reminder that sovereignty, dignity, and hope are still alive, waiting to be claimed. If this message has moved you, then subscribe to this channel. Not because we ask for numbers, but because we are building a space where voices of independence are honored and where stories of pride continue to be told. By subscribing, you are not just supporting us, you are choosing to walk with us into the next chapter of Africa's unfolding story. The fire of the new revolution is burning, and it is being fueled by the realization that we are the masters of our own destiny. Through the unwavering stance of Ibrahim Traoré, we see the blueprint for a continent that no longer begs for foreign approval but demands its rightful place in the sun. The path taken by Burkina Faso proves that when a nation decides to protect its own soil, the chains of dependency begin to shatter. As we rise to meet the challenges of this new era, let the world know that the spirit of Ibrahim Traoré is not just a voice from the Sahel, but the awakening soul of a unified and sovereign Africa.